Picking up where we left off last time, we managed to secure the water gym badge. Also, I want to apologize for not releasing some sort of release schedule for these videos. I'm kind of doing them off the cuff and whenever I can, basically. That all being said, we enter the mines because Hop tells us to. We end up meeting Beatty again, who challenges to a battle, and we are woefully unprepared this time around. I try to do the usual setup shenanigans, and unfortunately, Beatty Sololus knows Psyshock. Psyshock is a special attack that deals damage based around our defenses, and Calm Mind does not increase our defenses, so we take full damage from the attack. So we take the loss and we go back to revise our strategy. I tried using Reflect this time around, and unfortunately it doesn't really work because it's still a special attack. So we use the 5-head strategy of using Roost to stall out until he runs out of Psyshock PP. There's not much to watch here, so I decided to skip some of the footage here. After successfully stalling him out, we decide to set up once again. We get pretty low here, but we end up sweeping anyways, and it's a pretty easy fight from here on out. It's here we meet Kabu, and we head back to Motostoke. At the hotel, we have a battle with Marnie. However, coming into the fight, we don't have full HP, and we end up losing. Coming into the second fight, we are fully healed and we're ready to rock and roll and use our setup strategies once again. This time around we are much more successful and we managed to beat this fight without too much of a problem. We end up getting low at one point, but at the end of the day all we have to do is continue to spam Echoed Voice. With our fight with Marnie over, it's time to head on over to the fire gym. While I admire the fire gym's mission challenge, it's not really all that fun. In fact, it's more annoying than anything else. And now it's time to face off with Kabu himself. We should have the advantage here considering that our Hoothoot has a type advantage over his ace Pokemon. He leads off with his Ninetales. He starts off using Will-O-Wisp, which doesn't really affect us too much during this fight. And we pretty much do our usual setup shenanigans. I'm not really sure why his Ninetales knows Quick Attack, but whatever, we'll take it. I really don't know why, but I have a habit of really setting up my Pokemon, and I think it's a little bit overkill, but whatever. After about 4 Calm Minds, we're ready to go on the offensive here. Alright, I lied. Apparently I didn't think that that was enough, so I decided to Calm Mind 2 more times. Keep in mind that I'm sort of watching the footage after I've captured it a couple days ago, so I don't really know how these fights turn out. We go ahead and take the opportunity to roost up again before finishing off the Ninetales. He sends out his Arcanine, which doesn't really stand a chance against our super boosted Hoothoot. With his Arcanine down, it's time for his last Pokemon, his Centiskorch. And so we Dynamax to match his Dynamax, and you can only guess how this goes, really. It's no surprise that our max airstream knocks out his Centiskorch, no problem. With his Centiskorch down, we're able to secure our Fire Gym badge and we're able to head off to a Hammerlock. After traversing the wild area, we reach Hammerlock. We get bombarded with more cutscenes with our favorite twist villain before heading west to Stowside. We run into a bit of a snag here as we face off against 2 Team Yell Grunts in a row. We really don't have too much problems with the first one, we just use our standard bread and butter tactics. The real problem arises when we reach the second Team Yell Grunt. Liepard hits harder than the previous Pokemon. We use our typical reflect setup technique here. Unfortunately, we fall victim to some RNG and we lose the fight. After this fight, I decide to grind up a little bit more until we're a little bit stronger. We come back once we reach level 44. I decide to try to brute force my way through the first fight, and unfortunately it doesn't really go as planned. We take a lot of damage early and we enter the second fight with little HP. This time around in our second fight, we managed to have a little bit of RNG go in our favor instead. She misses her Fury attack and we're able to roost up. This time around we just decide to roost and reflect up until we're able to start attacking. It really only takes 2 echoed voices to take out her Liepard and we're able to move on. This route happened to be one of the hardest routes in the game for me. I think it has a lot to do with the Pokemon in this route and just how hard they hit. I actually opted out of fighting many of the optional battles on this route. Unfortunately, there is a non-optional fight that blocks our path. We immediately start attacking with Echoed Voice. Anyways, we knock out the coughing and we're able to move on to the Sudowoodo, which we use Echoed Voice again. Unfortunately, we do lose this fight, but not by much. I decided to use some XP candies just to give myself an edge here, and unfortunately, I just went overboard. And so our Hoothoot is really overleveled at this point, although, to be fair, the stats are not too crazy. We use the same strategy this time around as well, and we managed to completely overpower this battle. I actually really like this trainer's expression towards the end, as it really just shows like, hey, what just happened? Once we reach Stowside, it's time to face Hop once again. Now this really isn't much of a battle, as we're able to just set up pretty easily and then just sweep right after that. I do feel bad about being overleveled here, as it does seem like I killed off all the challenge of this run. However, later on we'll see that that's not the case. Anyways, with Hop defeated, we head on and over to the fighting gym. The gym mission here is really not that crazy or anything like that. It's really not much of a challenge, and it's just sort of there. With the challenge out of the way though, it's time to face off with B, the fighting gym leader. Not only do we have a type advantage, but we also have a level advantage here that is, quite frankly, not very fair. We do our usual setup shenanigans on the Hitmontop, who doesn't really hit too hard. We only set up with 2 Calm Minds here, but it's more than enough to take out her Pokemon. And it's not long before we have to face off against her Gigantamax Machamp. Funnily enough though, I forgot to Dynamax my Pokemon right away, and so we almost lose the match. Thankfully we had our Reflect up to tank off the Max Darkness, and we end up winning the match. After securing the fighting badge, we start to set our sights on the Fairy Gym badge. But not before we have a rematch with Beatty. He leads off with Duo Sign, and I'm not too sure if he knows Psyshock still, so I just end up doing our usual setup shenanigans. His Duo Sign knows Light Screen, which halves our damage, but we do end up getting a little bit lucky here, and we end up sweeping. With BD down, it's time to go to Balloonea. Once we're here, we make a little pit stop at a trainer's house. We get into a quick battle in order to receive our Eviolite, which is a powerful item that will help us survive most of our encounters from here on out. This item increases our defense and special defense significantly so that we're able to take more hits. With that all being done, it's time to head on over to the Fairy Gym. The gym mission here is actually pretty interesting, but it's really not too much of a challenge. With the gym mission out of the way, it's time to challenge Opal. This time around we don't have a type advantage, although we are a bit over leveled for this. Anyways, she sends out her Weezing and we just start off doing our regular shenanigans. Just to make it a little bit more challenging, I tried to answer the questions incorrectly this time. We managed to get our speed lowered, and Weezing decides to use Tackle. We set up another Calm Mind before going for an Air Slash. The Air Slash knocks out the Weezing, and we're on to our Togekiss. We decide to Roost here to gain back some HP. We get asked another question, and this time I decided to answer Purple because she's always talking about Pink, and apparently that's wrong. Or rather right, as we get our defenses boosted. Togekiss, however, gets her stats boosted through Ancient Power, so this becomes more of a slog of a fight. Eventually we do get past her Togekiss and we're on to her Mawile. As soon as she sends out her Mawile, we are asked another question. I decided to go for the cheeky answer here, and I'm rewarded with some stat buffs. Now even though Mawile resists Air Slash, we don't need to set up for this, we just go ahead and immediately take her out. Now we're up against her last Pokemon, Alchemy, in which case we decide to Dynamax to match her Dynamax. The Alchemy's G-Max Finale doesn't really deal too much damage, and we're able to just one-shot it. With her final Pokemon down, we managed to defeat Opal and earn our Fairy Badge. We've come pretty far along our journey, and I believe this is a perfect stopping point for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, go ahead and like it, subscribe, and make a comment down below. The next episode is planned to drop around 3 p.m. EST tomorrow.